There are more teams going home from the IPL early. Let us take a very close look at what the hell is going on with them as we do our exit interviews.
As a cricket journalist, I would travel sometimes up to 200 days a year. I loved watching cricket games. I loved going to new countries. It was an absolute dream. But there was one thing I hated more than anything else about it, and it was this little pin. The thing that I need to change my SIM card in every new country. The absolute worst thing about this pin and SIM cards is when I was traveling to the West Indies, of having to arrive in every new island or country and having to work out if I could still find this pin and then line up and get my SIM card in every single airport. Well, now we have the answer thanks to Sally. They can make it so you never have to worry about this nonsense ever again. They use an eSIM app that once you install once, it is easy, simple, and cheap. Oh, and it works in more than 160 countries. And you can throw these pins away forever because now you just need to download the Sally app before your trip. And if you do it with our code, Good Areas, you get an exclusive 15% discount on Sally eSIM data plans. So before your next holiday or work trip or any time you have to travel to another country, download the Sally app and use the code Good Areas, all one word, at checkout, and you can travel like a pro with Sally.
LSG. A lot of people weren't very optimistic about Lucknow's chances before the start of the season. By that I mean me, who had them for dead last. That was because their bowling lineup did not look great on paper. Their only overseas quick bowler was Shamar Joseph, and he didn't actually play a single game, as many of us kind of guessed. As a bowling unit, they have the worst economy rate and the third worst strike rate this season. That's the double whammy. But Digvesh Rathi helped a lot. He's been the standout bowler for LSG, picking up 14 wickets in 12 games and an economy of 8.2. He was used in all phases of the innings. Their only other frontline bowler who played at least 6 games and conceded less than 10 runs and over was Prince Yadav, and he took 3 wickets in 6 games and an economy of 9.85. You get my point here. They had a good season with the bat, the 4th best strike rate, and the 5th best average. Their strongest phase with the bat was probably in the power play. Nicholas Pooran started the season in a way that few people ever have in the IPL's history, while the opening pair of Mitchell Marsh and Aiden Markram did pretty good as well. Throw in Ayush Badoni and Abdul Samad, and there were some moments. Of course, David Miller was a little bit underwhelming. But I think Lucknow overperformed this year thanks to Pooran being incredible early on. But they could also argue that it's almost impossible to have a year this bad from Rishabh Pant. If he had a half-decent season, surely they would have actually ended up even better. It also doesn't make sense to move on from him after just one terrible season. But his gameplay against spin and T20s has now been a cause for concern since, the 2020 IPL? Lucknow only won 2 home games and they lost 4. They actually beat 2 strong sides. Mumbai weren't actually in form at that time, and Gujarat. Every loss of theirs came batting first, failing to defend scores of 171, 166, 159, and 205 again. Comparatively, Lucknow were better at home in the previous 2 seasons, winning 7 and losing 6. I think their batting is okay, but they need bowlers. They will hope that Mayank Yadav is fit and firing at his best next season. They've invested 11 crores in him. Will O'Rourke is one bowling option they could think about retaining for next year based on his talent and obvious attributes. Of course, they can't be sure about him. He's played most of his T20 cricket in New Zealand so far. Should they consider selling Miller and Akash and freeing up another, 15 odd crores to spend on bowlers? I think one thing that they just absolutely have to do is they need an overseas bowler who can play when things go wrong, even just as a backup. Having a look at this, I just can't see this as a squad who can win a title in this cycle. But I can see them sneaking some playoffs. But I think they're going to find out that bowlers are quite important. KKR were the defending champions, had lost 3 key players from their title run last season in Phil Salt, Shreyas Iyer and Mitchell Starc, due to the mega auctions. They signed up Quinton de Kock and Spencer Johnson, and the South African lefty made 152 runs in 8 innings, and one of those was a 95 not out, while the Aussie Southpaw played only 4 games. So they did what they were supposed to do, and it kind of went to shit anyway. KKR batters had the 3rd best strike rate in the first 6 overs, only behind Rajasthan and Punjab, and were 6th in average. Most of that was because of their skipper, Ajinkya Rahane, who wasn't even really supposed to be the skipper, right? He scored 238 runs with a strike rate of 187 in the power play. And they signed him for just 1.5 crores. Sun on Orion averaged 34 and struck at 168, but their performances saw a drastic dip in the next 10 overs, making them the worst team on both metrics in that section. I mean, really bad. Their struggles against spin were incredibly obvious in this period. KKR's bowling unit was a bit of a mixed bag. Their spinners had a great season, and that's their strength, so yay. They were good on economy, on striking, on numbers of wickets. However, their paces were very expensive, the most expensive, in fact. But they did strike once every 3 overs when we weren't picking the ball up from beyond the boundary. Kolkata won 2 and lost 4 games at Eden Gardens. There was a no result as well. 2 of those losses were while defending totals of 174 and 179. There was also a close loss against Lucknow and a huge one against Gujarat. Last season, they went 5-2 in 7 games. Venkatesh Iyer was their big buy at the auction, and he could only make 142 runs in 7 innings at a strike rate of 139. Andre Russell was another big signing, and he had, let's be honest, a fairly disappointing season. And another retained player who didn't step up was Rinku Singh. And I think it would be reactionary to release the latter too. But they might look at letting go Iyer, De Kock, and Spencer to explore more middle order options and maybe high quality overseas, if that's even possible. If Ajinkya Rahane can keep up his current performances, it probably makes sense to start to use him as an opener so that they can attack the power play that way. They also need to decide if they still think Narayan opening is a sustainable option in the long run. But they have gotten away with it for 2 years. I think the main question for them is, do they run it back or start again? One good seamer, I think, could change things quite a lot, although they also need to play spin a lot better. But some of their batting issues were just form. So while Dre Ross and Narayan are still with us, it's probably worth 1 more year because this team is old, but not ruined at the moment. Run it back, and if it doesn't work early next season, pivot to the rebuild. Delhi Capitals won 6 out of their first 8 matches, and since then, they won a single game when the season was over. They also shared points with Sunrisers in a rain-affected game that they could have also potentially lost. So what really went wrong for this team? Or were they just actually not that good and had a bit of a blessed start to the season? They had the second worst batting average and strike rate in the first 6 overs. They had 7 different opening partners throughout this season. But nothing really ever seemed to work for them. In the middle overs, they had the second best average, but were 5th in terms of strike rate. But if we break this down, the batters averaged 42 at a strike rate of 156 in the first 8 matches, and that dropped to 28 and 131 in the next 6. KL Rahul and Tristan Stubbs did very well, but none of the other major batters averaged 30. They just didn't make enough runs. Kuldeep Yadav looked like he was going to have an all-time great season, but a bit like Nicholas Piran, he also couldn't maintain that elite level all the way through the competition. Vipraj Nigam was amongst the wicket takers in the first 5 games, and then it was almost like he was a batter after that stage in the season. Akshar Patel led the franchise this season. He took 5 wickets in 12 games. He's a good defensive option, but little more than that. And Mitchell Stark had some good moments, and he also had some bad moments. He eventually went at over 10 runs and over. In fact, Delhi's quicks combined had an economy rate of 10.33, the 4th worst in the tournament, and only Rajasthan were worse at taking wickets. They won 3 and lost 4 games at home. But interestingly enough, they were 2-0 at Visakhapatnam and 1-4 at the Kotla. In the IPL in 2024, they had a 5-2 home record, 1-1 in Vizag and 4-1 in Delhi. Their only win in Delhi this year was the Super Over game against Rajasthan. They failed to chase 206, 205, and couldn't defend 162 and 199. It's worth mentioning, though, that this was their first win at Vizag was a 1-wicket victory against Lucknow as well. Now, they had some bad luck because T. Natarajan was their 3rd most expensive buy at the mega auction, and he played in 2 games, including the second innings washout versus Sunrisers. So maybe he played in 1 game. Jake Fraser McGurk had a torrid time. I think a few of us saw that one coming. Mukesh Kumar picked up 12 wickets at 10.3 runs per over, and Harry Brook opted out of the tournament. Those are 4 players that they invested a lot of money in and got far from the expected returns for various reasons. I think next season they have to look to some better fast bowlers and more reliable batters around Rahul and Stubbs. Of course, much of that will depend on their eventual purse after they retain and release players before the next auction. But I think where they ended up was about right this season. It might have looked lopsided because of the way the year played out, but I really think that this was about fair for them. This squad never quite felt whole. And when they played better teams, I think they struggled. Getting Natarajan back and a batting order that can play 2 games in a row makes them a stronger team next year. So I don't think there is nothing to work with here. In fact, when you look at all 3 of these teams, they all had a chance at the playoffs at various times, but really weren't that close. I think KKR is the best chance of an instant turnaround. Delhi is the one that could still make a decent team over the next 3 seasons, but Lucknow just need a bowling attack or Purran to rest in God mode all season. If you like these kind of videos, please like, subscribe, and come back again, and we'll have more IPL and more other content. Tell your mum about us. Tim Wigmore's Test Cricket, A History is out now. The book tells the story of the players, matches, and politics that have shaped the game around the world since 1877. It's the product of 5 years of research that includes interviews with Sachin Tendulkar, Pat Cummins, Michael Holding, Murali, and Kane Williamson. Put Wigmore on your shelves today.